Hi, you're listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all topics personal safety. I'm your host, Sofia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. Before we start today, please take a moment to rate this podcast. If you are a patron of the podcast, you've listened to a few episodes already. If you have time to give honest feedback, it just takes a few seconds. Head up there and give it a star rating. I know right now we have 45 five-star ratings on Spotify. That's where I listen the most, and I just couldn't be more thankful for you all taking a couple seconds out of your day to support us. This episode is sponsored by Big Tech's Ordnance, your soon-to-be favorite retailer for all of your firearms needs. BTO believes in only selling high-quality gear for responsibly armed citizens, as well as providing pre- and post-sale support. BTO values firearms training and supports firearms instructors nationwide. They even pay for their own staff to train with high-level instructors to ensure that when you as the consumer reach out, you are taken care of. Today we have John Valentine back on the show. This is going to be such a lovely episode, I can just tell already. We had an awesome pre-show chat, especially about the Combatives Association Summit coming back up this year, 2024. I'm so excited to go again. But before we start that, John, I would love for you to reintroduce yourself to the listeners.
Hey, what's going on, guys? So, Sofia, thanks again for having me back on. It's always a good time having conversations with, like-minded folks. So my bio is very simple. Martial artist, longtime military, almost 2 decades of service, Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and combatives instructor, live fire martial artist.
I love it. Live fire martial artist. Very cool. And what is your background with training from the civilian side and then law enforcement side, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so I've been a combatives instructor since 2007. I was started there. You always start teaching people whenever you become a non-commissioned officer in the Army. So I've been training folks, are responsible for training people and leading them since 2005. I got my first instructor certification in 2007, and at that same time, I also started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu actively. Like the first core group of people that I had to train was like the personal security detail for my brigade commander. So that was like kind of a very a demanding audience. So it just really inspired me to go and dive into all the material that I can get, and I just got very serious about it. And I realized that the event or the paper that came with being an instructor, it came with heavy burden, a constant burden of responsibility and readiness. And so it's just something like I just followed that path of where it took me, and I can't believe where I'm at right now. And I'm really excited to see. I totally underestimated where the next 10 years would take me, and like I'm really excited to see what the next 10 years brings.
Absolutely. And something I particularly like about you, John, is that you saw a need in the industry, and we're going to talk about that today, the need that I'm talking about, and you took action to fill it, and you're continually filling it. I was honestly so impressed by the turnout of the first Combatives Association Summit, the first summit. So many people there ready to train. Everyone there took it seriously, but also they're also open to discussion. It wasn't like this, like, if you're not at this level, you can't be here. I mean, your promotions for the event even say you don't need to have experience, and I agree with that. I've had some people DM me and say, like, hey, what level do I need to be at to attend this event? And I've told them, you don't need to be at any level. This is a great introductory even course for people who don't know what they need to work on, so they can learn what they need to work on in these little workshops and then like be empowered to move on from there. So since we're on the topic, I would love for you to explain the layout of the summit so that people can know. And then I'm really excited for today's topic. This is something that doesn't get a lot of exposure on this podcast. So if you've listened for some time, definitely stick around. I'm really excited. We didn't even plan some of these topics, but during our pre-show chat, I was like, dude, we have to get into this stuff. So anyway, back to the question. How does CAS work?
So Combative Association is, or the summit is kind of an event that I would wanted to go to or just really wish was around when I first started getting into concealed carry. And I got into this as a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and I didn't do a lot of like door kicking stuff. I mean, I had a lot of students that do really cool stuff, but I personally, like, my job wasn't an operational function. It was more like operational support. So, but that gave me exposure to see what it was like when people got shot at, when they got blown up. So, uh, I just realized that, or I knew that itty bitty bullets don't turn people to dust. It doesn't make them go away. So one of the first questions I asked my instructor when I got my permit was like, "Hey, what does it look like to get into a fight and I'm armed?" Because after what you just told me, this 16-hour course, you just told me I just can't, like, if somebody just comes up and slap me, I can't just drug and burn them down. So I asked him, like, but I understood the liability that came with, like, getting into a fight, guns get loose, all these things. So I was like, trying to figure out, there was like a concealed carry combatives course. That was kind of the question I asked. And he didn't know any of one. He just kind of gave me the best answer he had at the time, and it just didn't satisfy my curiosity. So from there, um, I just started to look up, and I found Matt Larsen online, and I'd been living in North Virginia at the time, and I was like 20 minutes from his gym, and started training with Matt, and everything just kind of snowballed. And the other thing I saw was, like, just looking at this stuff on social media. It was just like, if you look up hashtag combatives, it's just like a bunch of really awful kung fu with, like, maybe a knife or a gun thrown in, and it's just like combatives. And or something crazy where it's like, if the person touches your shoulder ever so gently, you just pull your knife out and place, like, just kind of crazy stuff that'll, like, send you to jail forever. So it was like, okay, this is not practical at all, or they just really overcomplicated it to where it's like you had to get this very, very specific angle with this so it was just very, very silly stuff. And it was nothing I experienced with fighting at all, or silly, platitudes like, hey, if you get into a knife fight, you're going to get cut. Well, I've been in kind of all kinds of fights, and every single one of them, I took damage. It's just like, so it's like almost implying that, well, if I get into a fight, there's a way for me to fight where I don't take damage, right? And that's just not the case. It's just not it's not authentic. And that's really what I started to really find. Well, like, what is authentic? What is real? And how do I personally get the experience I need to where I'm able to drive my training in a direction that makes sense and that's practical in a way that it's solving my real problem that I'm gonna have in a self-defense situation. And a lot of people really didn't have that answer. Most of the time, what happens is people will go to a martial artist, and what happens is they teach you their martial art. And I started to realize that every martial art is essentially a tactic for fighting, really a depth of exploration in a specific tactic for fighting. And so, like most young men, my first martial art was boxing. And that's because my tactic for a fight was punch somebody repeatedly until they could not fight back effectively. So I found a martial art that helped me get better at executing that plan. And then I discovered grappling, which is like, if somebody has the boxing plan, they're going to be in big trouble. And it's not that boxing is a BS martial art. It's just like, there isn't a double leg takedown defense in boxing. So again, right? So the grappling is a tactic. The striking is a tactic. Then with self-defense, we started realizing, like, using language as a tactic, using a pistol as a tactic, same way using a knife. It's just there's a taking the martial arts and then adapting them to provide real solutions was not something I really found a lot of. And so we created this group of friends of mine, me, Cliff Byerly, Redbeard Combatives, Ben Albin, Matt Larsen. We started a Facebook group just because we were just tired of the nonsense that was out there. So we just started talking about this, and all of a sudden you get, like, dudes who've been doing this for a long time that I never even heard of. So you had Craig Douglas, you had Paul Sharp joining, you had Cecil Birch joining, and just really just a long list. Chuck Haggard, everybody, right? And it just opened my eyes to this world. I didn't even know what was going on. These conversations that were going on about self-defense, and it just continued to snowball. And I knew it was a good thing to do because, or I, I felt like the confirmation that this was a good route to take of taking it to social media was because that there were other people who had the same question, and then some people who had different answers, and it just became this living thing that just kind of took on a life of its own. And now we're at 2024, about to have the second summit. So yeah, excited.
SOG knives began with the mission to reproduce the original SOG Bowie knife used by the Special Ops Unit MAC-V SOG. Today, SOG knives are carried with confidence into the most demanding situations. Forged out of tradition, hardened in the field, honed for you, whether you're protecting others or leading an epic hunting expedition, tackling one of life's everyday challenges, or facing your most extreme conditions yet, lead the way with SOG. What began as a single commemorative model soon became a full line of innovative tools, field-proven by U.S. Special Forces, even honored as the Navy SEAL knife of choice. I've personally carried SOG knives since I added knives to my everyday carry setup, and have yet to be disappointed by their design and durability. Their craftsmanship is rooted in legacy of honor and courage, and is unmatched. With SOG by your side, you are equipped to lead the way, no matter the challenge. Join the ranks of those who dare to push beyond limits and define their own legacy, and use code SHESHIELD to support the pod and to save. That's SHESHIELD at checkout. Absolutely. Well, I loved hearing the Inception story again pre-show. It just brought me back to why I originally went to the conference and why I believed in it, still believe in it, and so on. I love that you all did something. It wasn't just, kind of poo-pooing on, the craziness on social. And I giggled earlier because that's so true. Like, I remember even starting in my Korean traditional style martial arts, someone like grabs your wrist and then you immediately, like, you flip them. There's no question. It's just like, I'm gonna step under and I'm gonna, like, flip you over my shoulder. And it's like,
you counter a grab by, like, basically like almost attempted murder, right? Like,
yes.
what?
Yes, absolutely. And if anyone's listening and you practice a traditional martial arts, there are so many benefits to it. I mean, there are so many little things you can take from it, just like anything, but the practicality of it was not there. And that's why I started questioning things, and eventually ended up in a jiu-jitsu gym, and then I ended up in Muay Thai because I wanted to learn to use my elbows and knees and stuff like that. So I love that, you actually inquired about this stuff and then you took action, and here we are today. You put on this event for people who have the same questions. They can show up and kind of get a taste of everything. Would you mind kind of explaining the diversity of training that will be there? I know last year I thought that we were supposed to bring guns. I wrote you, and I was that awful student. I wrote you like the night before, and I was like, dude, guns, right? Like, how much ammo? And you're like, no, like, no guns, dude. So would you would you explain that?
Yeah. So so I've taken a lot of courses, and one of the hard things about going to courses and all that is just that it's so demanding. It's such a huge investment for a lot of reasons, because you got to generally you go to a place that's very remote. So there's not a lot to do, so you got to bring food with you or anything like that. Also, because all the investment that goes as far as getting there, paying for equipment, all that stuff. So, like, now you're essentially dipping into a competing between vacationing with your family and then also meeting your obligation as a protector of your family as well. Like, those two things, they're in conflict. So there was a lot of questions or a lot of problems I was trying to solve because I experienced it myself. And one of the things was like, okay, let's make it to where there don't need to bring anything. Like, you literally don't need to bring anything. You don't need to buy anything. Everything is going to be provided for you. All the training equipment, all the holsters, water, notebooks, towel, all that stuff. We even make sure to send an email to remind people to put on deodorant and trim their nails and all that stuff. So,
Yes.
yeah, right. So again, right. Right. So all those things, right, to make it to be a comfortable experience, right? And the other thing is that we are actually holding our event indoors inside in a venue where it's a really nice place, really great weather, but you're also going to be indoors. You're going to have AC. You're going to be padded mats and all that stuff. So as far as like your training and your exposure, it's going to be entirely very, very, very comfortable. The other side is that it's the location, Dobreville, Mississippi. I mean, Biloxi, Mississippi. It's kind of a hidden gem. The hotels there really give like there's a lot of casinos there. So it's like you have this like Vegas vacation vibe, and it's right on the Gulf Coast. So it's a beautiful area. And of course, it's in Mississippi, deep South. So the people are friendly. And so there's a lot for you to do. There's things for your family to do. And then you can go train during the day and then party at night and go or get some nice dinner or something like that, you know? So, the event is not going to be like, I wanted something, me and the guys were talking about it, like, you know, all those guys, they're good at managing a pace of a class. So it's not going to be like super demanding physically. You're not going to have like it's not a 3-day Coliseum, guys. Like it's meant for anybody of any level, any age to come by, learn something, have a good time, and just come in, you just show up, and essentially all the stuff is provided for you. Everything has been walked through from like a student perspective, to where as a student, I get everything I need to learn what I'm going to learn. I get to learn from professionals at a pace that is suitable for me, and I actually get to solve my problem. Now, the one thing that people really ask of like getting like a course certificate or something like that, you'll get a training certificate, but the summit is not necessarily a course. It's like it's more like tapas, right? It's like a sampler plate of like all this different body of work. What does it look like to defend against a knife? What does it look like to use language to defend yourself? What does it look like to fight for a gun, over a gun? What does it look like? What uh, talking about building warrior ethos? You know, because that's one thing that combatives does that like a lot of shooting courses won't really do. It doesn't bring you closer to like who you really want to be, right? And then like you get to train and like you get to discover who you really are, and it puts you on a process to like, okay, I need to go do X. So it's really, if anything, it's probably the best compass you're gonna get as far as like your capability and your needs, your strengths and weaknesses is in terms of your self-defense training.
I love that. Absolutely. I've heard people say in the past, like, about these types of events, right? I know, like, there are a few other events like this going on around the same time where they're kind of workshop classes, and it's like, how much can I really get? And it's like, if you apply yourself and take notes, especially after the class, like take notes on what you learned, give yourself practice points for later on, and then also take it for what it is. It's an opportunity to see where your gaps of knowledge are so that you can then fill them and then ask questions to these instructors who are just so open to, answering. They're there for that reason. It's all an incredibly positive opportunity. That is something I wish I did more last year. I think I was so just in the moment. I wanted to just be in the moment, but I do wish that I'd taken more notes on what to work on, because back home now I have a training partner who she doesn't carry concealed. She doesn't even own a firearm, but she's decided to just be an incredible friend slash training partner, and she's curious about the stuff. So every now and then I'll throw on my Filster Enigma with my blue gun, and we'll do some grappling, and I'll just kind of stand there sometimes. I'm like, shit, I don't remember. So this year, I'm excited to be more intentional with just taking a few drills home that I can then practice. And then that way I can think of more holes. Like, okay, well, she did this weird move, or like, I didn't know what to do from there. So then I can inquire about that and just build on that. So if you're listening and you're hesitant on that aspect, it's actually like a perfect amount of training for that time. And then you get to meet these instructors and their resources for you. They have some basis of knowledge of where you're at. You can then reach out and ask questions about those little training things that come up where you're like, I had no idea how to get out of this, or, I didn't know what to do from here. So thank you for sharing that. That's so lovely.
the other thing too is like you have the Facebook group as a resource. I mean, so we're trying to transition to live fire app to put it there just because that way we're not limited by the meta gods as far as like thou shalt not want to value thy life and stuff like that. So we're trying to get past meta. So but like I'm there. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. I don't have a million followers, so generally, like if you're talking to me, it's gonna be me. Everybody had my cell phone number, so if you guys have questions and all that, like the Facebook group is there, and like not just the instructor team from CAST, but also like a lot of really good, serious students, guys that are high level instructors or high level practitioners themselves, like real serious end users there. So there's a high signal to noise ratio there in that group, and we generally keep away the sifus of the world. So like, it's a so yeah, that's always a good resource too. Like
Got that.
so,
Like
so
Master Sifu?
yeah, right. All the grand dragons that just can't be taught anything else. So yeah, guys. So yeah,
Yes.
we're all really approachable guys. All of us. That like I think this material has a way of humbling you in a way that shooting doesn't, because it's like you kind of truly understand what your efficacy is in a real time way, in a real tangible way, because it's like the sim rounds and the marking cartridges don't really lie, or the drills don't really lie. So kind of people realizes like who they are, and everybody's. I think that's part of why the conference, like it was such a cool vibe, like everybody was there. We were all training, yeah, but we like even the conversations there and just the relationships built, like it was for me it was like worth the price of admission. So it was I don't know, like I'm biased, but I think it's just like one of the best events that I've ever been to.
Absolutely. Totally fair to be biased. Also, totally fair to acknowledge that you've done your research and you also work with these men. It's not like you just tell them what to do. I mean, you get feedback from them. You've taken their classes, you've trained with them, they've trained with you. I mean, you have a very good idea of what's going on. And now you have the first summit under your belt. Um, is there anything different about the second summit than the first, or is it pretty much the same flow?
Yeah, I mean, we had the venue change from last year. That was the main thing, and we have some instructor changes. So we're not going to have a ton of CQB because of the venue change. So we don't really have like the proper facilities to have that, right? Um, so and then also Chet, Chet he's winning his fight against cancer right now, so he's not going to be instructing. Shout out to him. God bless him. We also have some other instructors coming in. We have Kerry Murakami, who's like a retired Chicago land cop, jiu-jitsu black belt, awesome dude. He's got a material on fighting for a pistol coming up. We have Tom Kyrer from Sayok Tactical Group. He's going to come out, and or somebody from Sayok Tactical Group is going to be coming out and showing us some of the knife work. So we have like some offensive knife work happening. Um, the main thing is like to look at it as we don't want to be like there was a lot of jiu-jitsu black belts last year, but we're agnostic to jiu-jitsu. We don't really like, if anything, jiu-jitsu is adaptive for us. We use it as an adaptive martial art to solve the problem. We're not necessarily trying to push jiu-jitsu onto people, and that's kind of the main thing with all the instructors is just being martial agnostic, brand agnostic, and just looking at the problem of self-defense, solving it, and because there's multiple ways to solve any problem, everybody's kind of presenting their ways and their body of work and what they've done, how they've done it, and why they do it. Right.
Absolutely. Would you be willing to explain that a little bit more to someone who maybe doesn't have so much jiu-jitsu experience? I know a big question from my buddies who kind of get what I do. I have a lot of friends in medical school because, I was in medical school, I quit, and I love them so much. They really try to understand what I do, and they'll be like, wait, so how does gi jiu-jitsu apply if you're technically supposed to grab the garment and you don't have the garment? Like, they ask these really good questions. So would you kind of delve into that a little bit deeper for those listening that don't understand that?
So yeah, so I mean, the main thing with the garment and the gi is just that we need something robust and strong so we can keep training, right? It's like we don't want to be training in our t-shirts that are, this thin and tear up. So that's kind of one of the main things. But the other side of that, as far as the adaptive approach, is just, okay, what does the end state in jiu-jitsu look like? And it looks like getting a submission or getting dominant position, right? That's kind of dominant position being secondary, maintaining control. But in a self-defense situation for us, like, what does winning look like? And it doesn't look like a jiu-jitsu match. It doesn't look like, and a lot of times it can come down to saying the right thing and not letting the fight go anywhere. But the other side about that is like knowing what to say or knowing how to speak. Like, I still need that other person to agree with, like, they don't want this problem and I don't want this problem, and we kind of go both separate ways. So really the desired end state for a self-defense situation is going home and going back to peaceful living. That's kind of what that is. But sometimes people are adamant on making sure that that doesn't happen. So they'll generally, like in real fights, there's kind of three things. There's grappling, because they grab you or they try to control you. They don't want you to go somewhere. They want to take something from you, or maybe they want to take you. So there's grappling. And because at the ranges that grappling happens, there's strikes involved. So people will hit, you can hit somebody there at the same rate you grab them. And then there's weapons involved, because unlike a martial arts mat room or anything like that, it's not a sanitized environment. Even the ground is a omnipresent impact weapon. If we fall or anything like that, there's walls and structures and everything. So that's how this stuff applies, because the main thing is, like with jiu-jitsu, is that we can also use it in reverse. It doesn't have to be of like, I am going to push this to go to the ground. I can also make sure that I don't fall, I don't end up on the ground, or I can use it to make sure that they can't, if they grab me, they can't hold me. So that's what I mean by like the adaptive approach. I understand what it takes to control somebody, so I'm able to counter pretty easily anybody trying to control me because of that. Answer your question?
Absolutely. Yes, you did. There's actually like this huge shadow on me from my mic, so I'm like having to turn it. It doesn't really matter, but I just realized that. I was like, what is that shadow? I promise I was paying attention. No, I appreciate you explaining that. I got so much from that, even not that I don't have more to learn, of course, but even as someone who I feel like has a pretty good idea of where jiu-jitsu fits into this space, the way you just articulated that was so helpful. And even like ironed out things for myself mentally. So thank you for sharing that. I know before this, we talked about an overcomplication of tactics. You went on, I hate to call it a rant, but you kind of, because it was so well articulated. A rant is almost like not fair. But I would love for you to kind of explain to the listener what you explained to me, like what you're observing.
Yeah, I think what happens a lot in this kind of field, if you want to call it this study, people, they're looking mainly to push their martial art on you. They're not really trying to solve the problem. And I think in general, the students deserve more than the instructor's bias. So this idea of me just like, I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt, so I'm going to teach you jiu-jitsu, and then basically teach, it's like every martial art has its limit. So if that limit, you being unprepared at that limit, is catastrophic for the individual. So that's why it's like they've got to get more than my bias, and I can't push my martial art on them. I got to solve the problem and the way that goes. And just generally, like, there's kind of a couple red flags to me that I've seen, just because I started doing, I got a CrossFit level 1 coaching back in like 2010, and led to like a whole bunch of other fitness certifications. So I've been dealing with fitness since 2010, martial arts since 07, and then I started with gun stuff in 2012. And so being in these three communities, I kind of found like the red flags, and really, because most people don't really understand how to hire somebody when they're trying to pay for a course. So it's like, so skills, knowledge, ability. And I think people, when they have, I pretty much it's 100%, or there are exceptions to the rule, but it doesn't change the rule. And usually, like what I see when people are marketing very heavy science projects or anything like that, or very like complicated methods of training, it's kind of a good marker for BS. And it's like this thing you're doing is so complicated, and I've done the research to where I've discovered the secrets, and this is the way, and I have the right answers. I have all the answers. These other guys don't. And it's like that. I haven't created anything like as far as techniques and material, the content wise, I haven't created anything new. The human body has been the same for many millions of years, and fighting is fighting is fighting. Even a lot of the ways you look at hierarchy of position in jiu-jitsu, it's the same way of like tactics within an infantry platoon. It's like what's better than being on the side? You know what I mean? Being on top. What's better than being on top? Being behind them and on top of them. So you can always look at like how it's like you understand what winning looks like. It's very easy to make it simple, and that's kind of the way it is. It's like fighting is too dynamic and happens too quick to where you need to scroll through this Rolodex of terminology. I need you to understand the overall strategy for what winning looks like, where you can get to a position where you are balancing the scales in your favor, as opposed to like, I'm going to get this end state. And the idea isn't really just doing well. It's just like really mitigating damage, right? And that's really what it is, because you know you're going to take damage when you get into a fight, and that's kind of like where I focus, thinking about things from a principles first perspective.
Absolutely. Is there an example you could give the listener, like with knife fighting, if they haven't seen this, which I see this like a lot on my For You page. I mean, I almost see it as like research, even if a lot of it's BS. It's almost like I got to see what's like cycling out there. I need to see what my sisters are seeing. You know what I mean? But is there an example that just pops up in your head?
Yeah, like there'll be a knife fighter guy, and he'll be like, this person does this one move, and I'll do 7 of them. And for some reason, this person was a statue and couldn't counter or do a move back. And it's not usually like that. Like, it's always like, if you watch a UFC fight, it's like you see there's like a tit for tat, right? Or maybe a movement and a dodge. Like, there's never this whole thing of like, this person stands completely still, I cut them up 7 different ways, and then they all just fall to the ground into dust or something like that. It's just it's comical even. It's almost like, but I mean, it would actually be a lot more comical if the guys weren't serious about like, yeah, this is them, you know, coming up with a program. Like, it's really silly. If it kind of looks silly and it looks unbelievable, that's because it's not real, honestly.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Do you think of something else?
Oh man, there's a lot. There's just so much out. Like, I I get sent videos like on a regular basis now of guys like, what is this stuff? And like the dude who's using his human energy to like make the people fall, or a guy he'll grab a pressure point and like, yes, and this pressure, 120-pound woman can control a 6-foot man, and like, no, you can't. And here's the other thing too: the only people that are buying that are people who really want to buy the lie. I did an experiment with my coworker, right? And I did some crazy wrist lock that was not a wrist lock at all. And I was like, yeah, like this, I can control it. And she looked at me and she's like, okay. Like she, and the point of that was like that even her not being a fighter, she understood that she was being told some bullshit. And I would say, like, if you feel like what you're being told to is BS, and it doesn't look like it will work, I go with your gut. Trust your gut. Your money is your money as a representation of the time that you will not get back. So like choose wisely. If you're going to hire people, you're going to choose an instructor. Think about, like, at least for me, like I use a criteria of knowledge, skills, and ability. Is this person have some objective representation that they have the knowledge that they say they have? Like that's kind of like why the like I jiu-jitsu is not like my whole life. It's just part of what I do. But the idea of being a black belt says at least I've at least, it's like a degree in that I've done a long study of work and also people know jiu-jitsu is not BS. It's like you have to, they don't hand that shit out, right? So, and same thing with the college education. So, then it's like, then like, what's their knowledge like? What's their social media look like? What do they say? And are they actually solving my problem? And just because they have some objective standard of knowledge, are they actually performing? Are they actually still training? Are they going out to matches? Are they dry firing? All these things. Like, I think, when, if you don't see instructors like training or refining themselves, like, you just, I think it's a red flag for me. For me, it's personally. I think, because I'm constantly improving, I'm constantly getting better. So I think the students deserve that. For me to at least like find out where my stuff fails. Because again, like I care about their development, and so maybe there's like, hey, this is a limit of my course, so you can continue on by doing this, right? So that's the way I look at it. Is like you got to treat signing up for a class like hiring somebody. Look at their skills, look at their knowledge, look at their ability, and that'll be the best way that for you at least. That'll be make sure you getting a good return on your investment. And there are a lot of guys out there who have outstanding resumes, and so they've got a lot of knowledge. But then, like if you start really objectively assessing the skills and ability side, it's like it's kind of lacking. You could probably get more from training from Sofia than some of these guys with big resumes. So
I love that. Not just because you said my name as an example, but uh, thank you, John, for sharing that. It's an incredibly valuable kind of list of things to look for when hiring an instructor for yourself. That's a great way to look at it. Lately, I've just been attending courses that have come recommended to me. I haven't felt the need to really vet them because the people that tell me are people like, Chuck Haggard and, you know, Riley Bowman, people I respect that, vet these people almost for me. But for the people that are listening, like the average gun owner looking for the next steps, it is incredibly valuable to know what to look for. I know that, for example, my sister up in Boston, she was like, hey, do you think this person would be good to learn from? And she sent me this range that that was near her, and they have these instructors listed. The instructors don't have like hardly any information on them. It'll sometimes say like retired police, but that doesn't really tell me anything. So I have to then call and inquire, and that's for my sister, so why wouldn't I do that for myself? So thank you for empowering the listeners with not only knowledge, but encouraging them to just do the work. And then your time is just taken care of.
yeah, and I think also like people get kind of too caught up in the resume of people where they're like, oh well, I want to go learn somebody who's been to combat. Well, like that's not gonna be what your self defense situation looks like. That's not, and also regardless of what someone experiences, whether they are the UFC champion, they're the greatest special operator in the world, or the greatest SWAT guy ever, there is no one fight to define all of them. Like, it's not like I'm going to like, oh, this one fight, that's the way I'm going to train people forever. It's like every fight is going to be very specific and unique to the individual. So like you've got to, there are a core set of skills involved in every fight, and you have to figure out or extract those skills, figure out the training methods, and the training methods as far as like, okay, what's allowed here, right? What's the escalation of force here? What's the de-escalation look like? And then you come up and you can you can discover your own techniques as far as what's going to work for you. Like, I will never fight in the dress, but Sophia might. So she might have to figure out, like, okay, what does that look like to, deal with that? Um, and then like she's got to put herself in that situation, and you know what I mean. So there's like so many different individual elements. Like, I don't know who's coming to a course. I don't. So I can just basically give them the skills that empower them to discover themselves, and also makes it to where they don't need me for answers. They can trust their own experience. They can trust their own good judgment as far as what's going to work for them.
Absolutely. I love that. The dress is a good example, although thank you for that mental image. And then um, even something like off body carry, if someone came to you and asked you, sorry. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. John has had to mute me because my audio is coming through on his side, but we're both cracking up. For those of you that aren't on YouTube watching the video side of this. Anyway, yes, thank you for that. But so even if I were to come to you as just someone who's attending the summit and said, hey, do you recommend off-body carry? You could recommend an off-body carry course, maybe like Vicky Farnham or something like that. But then you could also speculate, like fights happen within this distance, within this time. So consider, you're trying to retrieve your firearm from a bag. So these are things to think about. You still have the tools necessary to get that person to think right about those tactics, but you're also being honest that you don't carry in a purse, you don't have personal experience with that. But I love that you have the perspective of someone who doesn't want your students to be basically under your bias. You said my students deserve more than just my bias, and I absolutely love that. That's incredible. Absolutely. Is there anything else that the listener could do to discern between I hate to say a good and bad instructor because that's so vague, but like say I were to call that individual at my sister's range, or call the jiu-jitsu gym and ask about the owners and their past. Is there anything else you look for, maybe even during your vetting process for your instructors?
Um, I think the main thing I really look for is just making sure that, like, where their product came from, like what are the origins, right? So like, the interesting thing about all the instructors at the Combative Summit is not so much of like their material, which is all phenomenal stuff, but really each one of them had their own personal need they needed to solve. Nobody was like, okay, there's a market demand for this class, so let me go ahead and meet this market demand. And you kind of can tell who those people are. And so, like, you can act like, I like approachable. I like people where it's like I can ask them a question about what their material looks like, and or why they do certain things, and then they have a very thoughtful answer, and they can talk about like this, and they're not like speaking about it in a way that it's like, oh well, this experience that I had in this one dark night on this one operation or whatever it is that they did. They're like, well, this is the way people work. This is the way they react to this. This is the way this goes down. This is how I've tested this. And this is what I've came away with. At least this is the best I've got right now. And they're still, every instructor I talk to that's really good at what they do and has like stuff that is like, man, I don't know how to improve this. They're still agnostic about themselves and agnostic about their material, and they're still trying to look for ways to refine it and make it better. And it just like, that's a huge like green flag for me, I could say. That's what's going on. Like, they're agnostic about about themselves. They're not really looking at themselves as an authority figure. They're looking at themselves as facilitating a solution to a problem that they've experienced. And then you've got a good question and they've got a great answer. It's like, wow, those are the things I don't consider. Because a lot of times what happens is we have an idea of what our plans are going to be. And then somebody who's tested these things, they don't really like, they present something like, oh, I've never even thought about that. And that's what's really the best part about the summit is that people now, they got a laboratory to test their tactics. Whatever they planned, they thought it was going to work, or whatever it is that they get an actual, at least an experience, a safe experience within a controlled environment under the guidance of expert coaches who've been doing this for decades. As far as what tactic am I going to apply? How am I going to try this out? What are my stipulations, or the things I'm going to do, how I'm going to carry? I actually get to try that out, and also get advice from people with multiple views as far as how they would solve that problem.
Absolutely. Yes. That is also the that is the experience I had at CAS. You also mentioned earlier just being able to network and meet people. I still talk to several members of CAS that I met just in classes and teaming up with them. That I just met on a whim. They were just like, "Hey, find a partner," and then I met up with someone random and we hit it off. I mean, it's kind of hard not to get along with anyone there because everyone is there to get better. Hopefully, you get those like little unicorns that come to show you what they know. Everyone has those in a class. Maybe it's a little bit of a spectrum, but my experience was that everyone was just trying to be better no matter what level they were at. And also, if you end up attending this, or you attend a similar seminar style training event, and you get from it that you do want to start jiu-jitsu or start doing something like Muay Thai to kind of work on like a small niche part of all of that, you could do that. I know people that started jiu-jitsu after attending ECQC. Like, they found that they were so uncomfortable on the ground with another person that they just wanted to get better at that part, like getting comfortable being uncomfortable. But, they also knew, because Craig lined it up so well, that that's not the end all. There's so much more to it. So yeah, I love that you're instilling that in your attendees as well. Awesome.
Yeah, we want to get people figure out, like, hey, what's going to work for me? What is it? And where are the people that can find? Because there's still people who don't know who Craig is and all that stuff. Like, none of us have 1 million followers or anything like that. We're not like world famous guys or anything. So, there are people out here looking for solutions, and they don't really understand who to talk to, or even if what they're saying is what they're being told is right. So there's a lot of apprehensions as far as who to train with and why. And I understand also from the student perspective that there may be guys that maybe they just don't want to train with. Maybe or maybe there's just someone who speaks to them in a way that this other guy doesn't, and they can learn better from this person. So it's like, how do I find the right person to train with? And so this is also kind of like a good audition for you as a student to figure out, like, all right, who's the next guy for me to train with, as far as like who is going to take, who's going to solve my problem, at least right now. What are my specific deficiencies, and who can I talk to that will fix that? So I think people there's so much more to gain from coming that is not really it's not really explicit as far as the marketing or anything like that, but or maybe not understood at first. But I think it's just hard. There's just so much to gain, I think, and just coming out and just like, I think just knowing that I was like, okay, this plan works, having that faith in my plan, I think that's worth it alone. But then, like, there's so much more. Like how much shooting are you actually going to do? Because most people they're not gonna put the time and energy into becoming a GM. They're gonna kind of like, yeah, I'm pretty good with a pistol, and this is boring. So how do I introduce something to at least like stimulate my training program? So now, like, you have this organic growing of a uniquely American martial art of like fighting, and then having a gun, then going shooting, and using a knife and all this stuff. So it's like, it's for me, it just makes everything so much more interesting. Like when I doing USPSA, which I love, it's a lot of fun, but just doing the stuff, the combative stuff, fighting with a person who's got skin in the game, and doing that is it's just a whole lot more fun. It's just like it's just so it's very very interesting to me. I can really get deep and explore that in a way that shooting I can't, right?
Absolutely. It's almost it's such an uncomfortable feeling because I get this feeling too, even at this level. And I don't mean that I'm not saying I'm at a GM level. I'm not saying I know everything I need to know. I mean, like, I have some awesome connections, but I still get to a place where I'm like, shit, like, I am missing this key component and I don't know where to go next. I actually remember I spoke to Tessa, I think it was Tessa Booth, before I attended CAS, and I was just kind of feeling this deficiency in my journey. This was around the time I dropped out of medical school and I had finished my master's, and I was kind of like just ready to dive into this industry. And I told her, I was like, I don't know what's next. Like, I've been doing USPSA. I'm not. I'm not good enough to share tips. You know, I can help people get started. I can do that. Teach them how to not get DQ'd, all that stuff. So I got to this place where I was like, but I'm I originally started this journey because of my desire to become a more well-rounded civilian when it comes to defending my life and my family's life. So I'm just feeling a little lost. And she was like, oh man, the thing that I do when I'm feeling that way is I go and take a class. And going to CAS was the best thing I could have done. And for those wondering, I know I'm like highly pushing it. I'm not being paid to say this. I was actually introduced to John through Kristen Irwin, the Healthy Buffalo. She's a friend of the pod. She introduced me to John. We had an awesome episode. So if you want more of this, definitely check out part 1. I'll link that in the show notes, which are the notes below the title, along with how to sign up for CAS. So you can hang out with us in September. But yeah, she introduced me. I was looking for people for the podcast. And then from there, I got to meet Chet, got to meet Matt Larsen, and all of the other just incredible people in this space. And it just gave me this sense, like you said, this sense of direction forward, kind of just propelled my journey. So if you're in the market for that, again, no matter what skill level you are at, I do highly recommend this. Speaking of skill levels, what would you say for someone who is a bit more experienced, who maybe is nervous, they won't like get what they need out of this? How do the classes kind of cater towards all skill levels?
So we'll start with kind of the novice. So the novice is like, it's like, all right, what's the next step? You've gone to the gun range, you shot at a target. Now, what does that look like as far as taking it to the next step? What is all the stuff like? That's kind of the end, right? Is like the gun comes out, you shoot the target, hooray, you're a win. But what about everything else that comes before that? We don't really, I think, especially in the gun world, right? We're always thinking about the shot timer, the beep, but there's so much time and everything that happens before that beep goes on. Right? There's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of victim selection. There's a lot of a fight. There's a lot of a struggle that we can't really capture. And then so there's like a huge part that's disconnected from that beep that we don't really get a chance to discover. And I think with the summit, we're able to explore everything to the completion, right? We're able to talk about going from the start of a conversation that goes wrong to now you're in that fist fight. Now that fist fight escalates to where your life's in danger and you have to, under resistance and pressure, get your firearm out, discharge it, and also making sure that you are compensating for making that you are not launching stray rounds into the public. When you layer it that way and you start talking about it that way, it's like, wow, self-defense, this is a very daunting task. And so that's kind of that's where we're at, that we don't get to, or that we are actually able to explore now. That's what's really, really different. So that covers how the novice gets that, right? They get okay, this is what the whole fight looks like. This is what this looks like. Now, let's talk about the intermediate practitioner. Somebody they've got a little bit of gun stuff, but they don't fight, or they got a little bit of fighting but they don't shoot. Now they get to see the intersection of those two worlds. Usually what happens is like we've approached training kind of in a compartmentalized manner, where it's like people, they have the thing that they like to do, they have the thing they're good at, and they focus on that. And then like we kind of see people exploring, like they'll kind of do the blue gun dice game where they'll toss in a dummy gun, or they'll do some retention shooting at speed, which is like exactly the wrong thing to do. And it's like, but it seems like it is, right? Because when you're naive or anything like that, there are things that in theory sound like this is the right way to do this, but then like in practice, and you start introducing all those elements that we talked about that the beginner gets to experience, then you're like, oh, okay, that was exactly the wrong thing to do. Like retention from speed, that's incredibly unsafe. It doesn't work that way. I can't speed retention shoot somebody who's got to draw a gun on me, because it's like, okay, hey, have you thought about this person hasn't presented capability, opportunity, intent, and you've just drawn and shot on real quick. Like, wow, okay, didn't really think about that. Or the martial arts guy who is like, yeah, you think about like, okay, I've got his back and I'm choking him, but he accessed a weapon and he's lodging, he's jamming a knife into my femoral. Like, yeah, I choked him out, but the bleed out like makes him the winner, right? So things of that nature, right? So like maybe you also need to know trauma medicine, like, and so we got a trauma medicine block happening this year as well. Um, so just kind of like where all of the different type of training, where they intersect, and why all these things that like people like you have been pushing onto the audience of like why they start to make sense. Now people get a tangible experience of like, okay, I really need to know these things. Now, we'll talk about the advanced practitioner now. So the advanced practitioner is a person who is doing these things and they've got students. I mean, you're going to talk to essentially, it's like a group of instructors with like 500 years of collective experience of instructing people. So you're going to learn a method of presentation, of instructing people that just comes from decades and centuries of practice. And you're going to find out like you're going to get a better method as far as like how to teach yourself, how to teach others, and how to reach others where they're at. Because again, right, usually we have a tendency to overcomplicate things or even speak in a way that is instructorship is about me taking the image that's in my mind and putting it inside of yours. And it seems like self-explanatory. We think about techniques, but we don't really think about like how to like is a student actually gaining or gathering all the information I'm trying to say. Like there's a constant thing where people say, oh, it's like drinking out of a fire hose, right? And to me, that's both a good and bad thing, right? It's like you can kind of go through something and maybe gain something, but like if the instructors at CAS, what they've done is that they've given a layered approach to how to teach people. It's like, we'll introduce this concept and then I'll teach you, or I'll correct one thing on you so what's ever the most egregious thing. So you're going to be, as a coach, you're going to learn from other expert coaches, and it's just going to make you so much more of a better coach in terms of delivering your own material to others.
Absolutely. It's almost like a mini shadowing course. Like you get to kind of shadow and see how the instruction takes place in a sense. There's so much you can take from it other than just the course material itself, I'm sure. So I went through my own compartmentalized training period, and I go through it every now and then because truly, in order to give yourself fully, to one aspect of training, you really do have to invest not only finances. So like my jiu-jitsu gym, I know is like $120 a month. So I need to get my time out of that. So some months my training is like very heavily focused on jiu-jitsu. But I mentioned earlier, when I was going through my master's, I only did USPSA training. I was investing all of my time and money in USPSA to the point that I remember concealed carrying. And I tried to think back to the last time I dry fired and I couldn't remember.
I think the next step is honestly, I think it's like that's almost a question like you start asking like, hey, how do I lose weight? And it's like most people, they know what they need. They already know what they need. They know they need it. They need to see what it looks like to get into this fight, what it looks like to mitigate damage and to protect themselves. They know they need to work on better social skills or anything like that, or even just or de-escalation. Active. Most of what people need is they need contextual application. Like and it's like you don't need another shooting course. You really don't. Like most of the time, you just don't. And I want to see you guys get out here and get active and just see putting your plans in actions. Like 20 September 20th to the 22nd in Biloxi, Mississippi, we have the Combative Association Summit. Come out, get some contextual application, see where your skills are, get a realistic assessment of yourself. And I understand it gets a little scary because it's like going to the doctor, right? And you're getting a health check and you're like, you don't know, you're getting kind of closer to who you really are. But the other side of that is you get to also get closer to the person you really want to be. And I think when you work on your weaknesses, it just 10x's all your strengths and just makes everything you're good at just makes it so much better because now you're plugging those holes in your game and now you're able to get to your main plan or whatever that focus is. And it's going to make it to where maybe you can't beat everybody, but at least you can't lose to anybody. And that's just a different kind of power.
Absolutely. I love that take on self-defense. Yes, contextual application. Love it. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope those listening enjoyed the empowerment from this episode. I know I feel empowered to think about what's next for me. As a content creator, I have to keep myself grounded on I still need to go and roll at jiu-jitsu. Even if I'm not going to collect content, I need to even have days where my buddy's really used to me filming our stuff, but she'll be like, oh, you're not filming today? And I'll be like, nope, I need to just ground myself and be here, be present. So we all have to do that in one way or another, depending on the life you live, the lifestyle you have. And yeah, I really love this. So thank you so much, John. This has been awesome. I cannot wait. Already have my Airbnb booked. I'm planning on driving, so I'm going to get amped up on the way. I know last year I panicked and I stopped at a 511 store and I bought 3 pair of 511 pants. I I panicked. I was like, I don't have any pants for this. But now I know how to pack for it. So if you're listening and you sign up and you're, especially women, if you're like, I don't know what to wear to this, let me know. I'll send you a packing list. But how exciting. If you're thinking about signing up, check out the show notes. At least just head there, look at who's going to be there. John has so many incredible instructors coming, teaching and speaking at the event. So check those instructors out. I'm sure you'll find a few that you know or you've at least heard of to get kind of amped up for the class. And then how does the selection process happen for the class? How do you get assigned to instructors?
Yeah, so 1 week before the event, we're gonna send you your wish list and you put it out there. But that was last year because we had a very limited space. This year we've got 22,000 square foot facility of belonging to American Top Team. So yeah, I mean, I think this year we're gonna probably people are probably gonna mostly get what they want. They're mostly gonna get it.
Absolutely. And of course, I knew that, from attending last year. I just wanted, you to explain that to who didn't know. If you're listening and you're like, she should know, she went. Yes, I know. But anyway, no one was thinking that before I said it. Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that. I'm so excited. And Auburndale was actually so awesome. I remember telling my family where I was going and they're like, where the hell is this? But it ended up being so much fun. It was right by the beach and then all these nice little restaurants. So I'm really excited for this new location in Mississippi. I don't think that I've ever been to Mississippi. So this is a way for me to travel to a new place as well. I'm super excited personally. And hopefully the listener, I'll get to hang out with you. Definitely write in. If you ended up signing up because of this podcast episode, I would love to know. Shoot us an email, sheshieldpod@gmail.com. Otherwise, the link to sign up is in the show notes. All right. So for those listening that want exclusive content, we have a Patreon. We're about to revamp that. So just keep that on your mind. Right now, we're not doing too much with it, but we're about to add some really cool features, some bonus content and whatnot. For these shorts of the episodes, these highlights, Lisa Hamilton, my bestie and a friend of the pod, she is the editor for all of the shorts that you all see on Instagram. Thank you all for following there. We're also on TikTok, YouTube, of course, with the full video content as well. All resources mentioned are in the show notes, like I mentioned, as well as how to find John on social media. Follow the Combatives page. Even if you can't attend this year, just follow along and stay in the know. If you like the podcast, please leave a review. This helps us get found. I cannot believe, again, how many of you have taken the time to submit a review. It means the absolute world to me that you guys care enough to do that. That is insane. Anyway, so moving on, more serious of a note, if you or anyone you know is a firearms owner experiencing a crisis, look into holdmyguns.org. They are an organization that will connect you with a local gun shop or FFL to store your firearm for you. Whenever you're ready to take it back, it is yours. The link to access their website and to find a storage location partner is in the show notes. Thank you for listening. In the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant. Are you ready to step up your shooting game? Introducing Walkers Incorporated, the pioneers in ear protection for shooting, hunting, and commercial applications. For over 25 years, Walkers has been revolutionizing the industry, ensuring your hearing safety and enhancing your shooting experience. Anytime I'm on the range, indoor or outdoor, I use Walkers ear protection to have crystal clear communication with my fellow shooters. I currently use the Silencer 2.0s and the Razor Slims for my range adventures. Not only does Walkers protect your hearing, but they also protect you. Being able to communicate with others on the range is vital to personal safety. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your safety when the ultimate goal is for overall better self-protection. With Walkers, you'll experience unparalleled comfort, unmatched innovation, and the industry standard in shooting ear protection. Never settle for anything less when it comes to your safety and enjoyment on the range. You can save on Walker's ear protection and support the podcast by using code SHESHIELD. That's SHESHIELD at checkout.